Do you think Boris Johnson's got it right, or should he have been more emphatic one way or the other?
No, I think broadly it's correct because for two reasons. We were not obviously involved in this particular operation. The Americans didn't consult anyone amongst their allies, so they took the decision they must take the responsibility for it. But if you don't want to escalate this now, and I don't think anyone wants to see it escalated if that can be avoided, then you don't want countries queuing up to say how marvellous the Americans were. That simply makes it more of a difficult confrontation to escape from.
So what do you think happens now? Because Britain, France and Germany have issued a statement which doesn't actually say an awful lot. But clearly the 2015 nuclear accord is now completely dead. The Iranians have said so. I don't see any way back from that. So the EU has also got to recalibrate its position too.
Well, first of all, I don't think one should see this as simply an isolated aberration by Donald Trump. I'm no admirer of Donald Trump. I don't admire most of what he's done on foreign policy. But the question of what happened to Soleimani was not simply an instant spasm of anger by him or by anyone else. Soleimani has been hyperactive over the last few years in essentially destabilizing the Middle East. He's become a threat not just to the United States, but also to most of the other countries in the region. I think what tipped the balance on this occasion was for a very specific American reason. Once the Iraqi militia, who come indirectly under the control of Soleimani, once they started attacking the American embassy in Baghdad, which they did last week, that brought back memories to every single American, not just to Donald Trump, of what happened after the fall of the Shah in Iran, when the American embassy was overrun by Iranian zealots, and I think it's something like almost 150 Americans were held hostage for over a year or so. And that was a humiliation for the United States. And I think that is something which Trump was unable to ignore, and because there was at least a slight risk that kind of activity could have been on the verge of being repeated.
But there's no logic to that, is there? Because by carrying out this killing, he's made it more likely that the American embassy in Baghdad will be under more risk.
No, well, I see what you're getting at. And there may be attacks on the American embassy, but they've had time to fully protect themselves, and they will not be overrun. We've seen the 3,000 extra troops that the United States is sending to the region. And, of course, they have massive air superiority. So I think in practice they could prevent it, but they had to send a signal. Now, whether they overdid it or not, that is a judgment that will be made by history. We can't decide at this moment. We can't decide because we don't know what the Iranian reaction will be. The Iranians have a quandary because they cannot contemplate an all-out war with the United States, partly because they would lose. Iranians are relatively weak compared to American military strength, and the Iranian economy at the moment is in a terrible mess because of the sanctions introduced mainly by the United States themselves.
But nor can they ignore this, can they? There will be a response.
Oh, I've no doubt there will be a response. There are two questions. See, I mean, just think what happens. You've got to judge when there is a reaction. Are the Iranians trying to escalate it, or are they simply trying to say, we could not ignore what you have done? And I think of the parallel when occasionally, for example, when the United Kingdom has expelled Russian spies, we always get a reaction from the Americans. We know in advance that's going to happen. So they will expel British personnel in Moscow. But the judgment, what one is looking for, is are they going to escalate it? Are they going to expel far more than we expelled of their individuals, or are they simply going to make a symbolic gesture? That's what we need to wait and see how the Iranians react. Will they do something symbolic, which may be very unpleasant, but essentially not an escalation, or will they deliberately try and up the ante? And if they do the latter, then they have to expect a further response from the United States, because the United States is not in a mood to be mucked about.